It's payback time now. It's payback time. It's payback time. And allow me to ask a question on behalf of all the students here. All the students here? All the college students here? Exactly. So I'm not alone. We are many, right? On their behalf. You know, Terry, when you are a lecturer in a university and you set an end-of-year exam, I mean, to be honest with us, do you want us to fail? Or do you want us to succeed? Or are you disappointed when we succeed? Just tell us. We want to get into the mind of the lecturer right now.
You know, when you meet your former student, and first of all, he's a reverend, so he has an elevated status, and he asks you, kwa nini uliunda hiyo exam ile kali kali? Mine is just say, you know, an exam is a test of knowledge at a particular point in time. Sometimes lecturers miss it by sort of saying, I am testing students to know whether they have reached my level. Okay?
See?
You see? So, we are testing the knowledge to see whether there was transfer of understanding. Okay? So sometimes we might be thinking that you need to understand at this level, but we make that mistake. We need to understand that the student, if it's a first year, is understanding the knowledge of a first year. Okay? So sometimes we make mistakes. We think because you are this postgraduate guy, you need to have elevated yourself to that postgraduate. So on behalf of all lecturers, I apologize.
Oh, great. I think that apology was long overdue, because you have no idea what horror stories you create out of those exams, but apology accepted. You know, when we're growing up, one of the things that we were told is that focus on one thing, right? Focus on one thing. Don't be too split in your thinking. I mean, just focus. That's sometimes a parent speaking and sometimes a teacher speaking. But when we look at your CV, Dr. Julius, you're in many places. I mean, you're everywhere. You are in supermarkets. You are with wildlife. You are with insurance. You are with media companies. I mean, how do you do this? How are you able to be in every place at the highest level and successfully?
It's true that even me as a lecturer, I always tell students, concentrate, focus, focus, focus. Okay? Even me, I focused. The fact
on everything, right?
No. The fact that I'm in different institutions, my focus has only been one. And that is management knowledge. What I transfer from one company to another one is my knowledge of management. That knowledge of management was born out of what I was teaching you, which is the theory of systems. That's the core.
And we'll talk about that at some point.
So the universality of systems thinking is what I transfer. There is no difference between a media company, a wildlife organization, a supermarket, or an insurance company. All of them are systems, and all of them have similar characteristics. All you need to do is, whenever I go to an organization, the first 2 weeks is I superimpose the systems thinking on that organization.
And
then
you can
I
use
know
words like
all the parts.
Superimpose is a big word. Just break it down for us.
What I do is I map. It's a mapping. The systems thinking, you map it in that organization and say, what's the core business of this organization? What are its components? What are the stakeholders? What does each stakeholder want? And then now, on a day-to-day basis as a CEO, you're doing stakeholder management. What do the customers want? If an insurance company, what do the customers want? They pay me a premium. When an incident happens, they want a claim. So therefore, I have to make sure that whatever premium comes in, we invest it well, map it that when the risks occur, the history, the actuaries do that job, they tell you, and then when the risk occurs, I have the money to pay the claim. Finished. Once I understand that, then my job every day is to ensure that that process works correctly. And I have all the experts to do that.
Okay.
That's it. If I went to KWS and say, okay, this organization, what does it do? And then when I went there, I didn't know even what they were doing. Because I'm not a biologist. So I mapped in my mind and say, okay, our job here is to protect this wildlife. Why? It's a national heritage. It is good for tourism. So I said, okay, so who are the key elements here? There's a ranger who must protect. There's a scientist who must do research. Okay? And then the stakeholders, there's a tourism who must come in. So when I mapped all that, then I said, what's my role? Is to ensure that all these moving parts are running efficiently. That's my strength. And that is what I carry from each organization to another one. Yes.
Wow. You make it sound so easy, right? So easy, but
it's not easy. That's why I tell you, it takes 2 weeks, first of all, to map it, first of all.
2 weeks is still a short time.
Similarly to, okay, it's a learning of a lifetime, but within 2 weeks, I must understand the basics.
Well, just ask yourself how long you understand to understand basics. Maybe
Basics.
a year, 2 or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the basics. If, for example, I was meant to be the leader of this church, it will take me 2 weeks to understand the basics. And then I can come here on stage and then I look at the audience and say, okay, this one needs spiritual nourishment. So, that is my strength.
He's just told you what he thinks about you right now. It's a systems theory thing, you know?
Yes.
All right. I mean, Kenya Wildlife, most of us actually knew you at that time. And you did a great job there. I mean, just turning around an organization that still stands well to this day. But let's leave the management. And there was one of the speakers who told us, go to the ground, right? Don't just stay in that office, go to the ground. Now, KWS, when you go to the ground, you find animals, right? Animals. Maybe you can tell us, there are all these animals, there are warthogs, there are porcupines, there are, many animals. But did you ever learn anything? I mean, let me complicate it for you. Can I complicate it for you?
Yes.
It's my moment, right?
Yes.
And I want you to put your lesson, say, about elephants or about in the systems theory.
Yes.
Hey.
Okay. Okay. So, okay. I'm now looking at him as reverend, so I have to be careful. He's no longer my student. Okay, so one of the things that I always was fascinated was from the theory of systems, you get to know that there is a pattern to things. Things don't just happen randomly. There's a pattern to things. Everything, there's a pattern. So, even animal behavior in the wild, there's a pattern. It looks random to a casual eye, but to a wildlife scientist, there's always a pattern. For example, he has mentioned elephants. Elephants are the closest to the human race in behavior. They are the closest to us in the way they behave. It's led by a matriarch. The oldest female is the leader of the family. Okay? And I'll give you an example of one in Amboseli National Park. The matriarch died in 2010. And we actually filmed the last life of that elephant. The family, it was a family of 400, roughly around 400. When the elephant died, the matriarch, it broke into 6 families. And I was asking the scientists, okay, so why 6? Why not 4 or 2? And said, the matriarch must have designated successors. And she had designed it that way.
Wow.
Okay? So they broke into 6 families and in a certain order. Okay? In Amboseli, actually, if you go to Amboseli, they are the most studied elephants in the world. And they have been studied since 1972. And each family and each elephant is by name. They are named. And so they know there. So it is very easy to study them as a system and what are the dynamics of the families and how they are operating as a system. Okay? Let me give you another one, the lions. Okay, so that was a snapshot of elephant family. It's actually fascinating. The lions are more interesting, and the males in this room will relate to it. In the lion family, the workhorse of the family is the female, the lioness. The lioness will do the hunting. The male just sit and watch, okay? They do the hunting. They take care of the kids, okay? The fascinating thing is that once she hunts, she eats last. Isn't that what happens at home? So the ladies, you confirm that. So if she hunts, for example, say a buffalo, which is their prime meat. So if she hunts to bring down a buffalo is very tough. Eh? So a buffalo is one of the toughest animals to bring down. But once she succeeds, she leaves the prey there, goes to pick the male. He has been launching, doing nothing. And then he eats fast to his fill. Then the kids eat next. And then she eats last, whatever is remaining. Isn't that a pattern in life? Everything has a pattern. Okay? Even plants. So therefore, Reverend, one of the things I want you to learn as young professionals is that things happen for a reason. They may look random to an unschooled eye, but actually, nothing is random. There is a pattern to things.
Amazing.
And make sure you learn that pattern, then you are able to immerse yourself. Organizations are living organisms. There are patterns to it. And so therefore, what is that pattern? In an organization, it's culture. Culture is what defines an organization. The habits, the behaviors, and the values of the people. And that there is a pattern to it. And once you call it in physics, it's a frequency. Once you enter into that frequency and understand the pattern, then you are able to lead the processes that are in that organization.
Wow, I think let's appreciate that brilliance. I think he's just confirmed to me that he's brilliant. So my question has been answered with 2 examples. You know, I'll have to interview again at some point. But it's, you know, I was listening to that matriarch thing, and I was wondering, I mean, why does it take so long to pass the 2/3 gender rule? You know, because, you know, matriarch elephant, matriarch lions, you know, it's very clear that there's a pattern around, you know, the value and the capacity of women.
I think the human race, Reverend, is not as clever as you think. Okay?
Wow, okay.
Because you see, our development as a species has not been as strong because we left one gender behind. That is where so if you look at the animal kingdom, they flourish because they bring out the best in each species. You know, male, female. But for us, I don't know where we lost our way. I don't think we were like this. But in the last 100, 200 years, we have, you know, distorted the relationship between species. And that is why we are saying, if, for example, Kenya were to unleash the power of both genders fully, this country would grow and flourish and glow. Wow. Okay? So
that's it's all coming from the systems theory, from a wildlife perspective. And I mean, you definitely are very brilliant, I must say, Dr. Julius. But we know you from your successes. You know, you are quite successful. But just tell this wonderful audience, do you remember one spectacular failure that you have had?
Let me not call it a failure. Let me call it a difficult assignment I had to give up.
That's clever.
Yeah, it's clever. So, and this was Uchumi. You know, I went there. I actually lasted 1 year, 3 months only. I went there when the thing was already in deep distress. But the cause of the distress had not come out. So my first assignment was to investigate. The board knew what had gone wrong, but the magnitude they didn't know. This is a company where the accounts had been manipulated for around 5 years. And it had a 5 billion hole. But you see, for those of you who understand management, you can postpone the inevitable, but it will catch up with you when you run out of cash. So when you manipulate the accounts, it's okay when you still have cash to run operations. But when you run out of cash, then Uchumi ran out of cash. And that is how the hole became visible. Now, so we went into a restructuring. Okay? And some of the painful decisions I've ever made in my management career were made there. In one single pen, one morning, I had to lay off 2,500 people in East Africa, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, as part of stopping the hemorrhage, because it was hemorrhaging very fast. And and then we had then figured out, we wanted a shareholder recall. It's a listed company, so therefore, CMA would not have allowed a rights issue, because then the books were in the red. So we couldn't go that direction. It had assets that we needed to sell. So we sold one on Gong Road. We got 1.2 billion. KCB refused to release it because KCB was one of the loanees. They had loaned us money. So KCB took it. Then they have some land in Kasarani. They had legal disputes, but it was fully in the books, but huge legal disputes. And then, then the land in Langata. So the assets themselves could not be easily liquidated. I even talked to other supermarkets. I even went to South Africa to look for somebody who could buy. One of the companies said it had gone too far, and it had that 5 billion hole. How are we going to? The government owned 15% of it. I went to government. Government, for it to process a loan, takes almost a year. So by the time the money came through, it was my last few days. Okay? And it was giving, instead of, I wanted 2 billion immediately, they gave me, I think, 700 million. I told them, 700 million is telling a thirsty person that I'm giving you a quarter of a glass when you need 2 glasses to quench your thirst. So to me, that was the most difficult. And one day, probably, when the story of Uchumi is written, it will be a great loss. Because why? What's the role of a supermarket? I want you to read about the role of Walmart in America in promoting American goods globally. Walmart has 11,000 shops. 90% of what they sell is American goods. So we lost the opportunity ourselves to sell Kenya in East Africa, Kenyan manufactured goods. And that was the reason why Uchumi itself was formed in 1975. Okay? It was part of what was called in 1966 Africa Trade. It was Africa called Trade, Industry. There were 3 things. Anyway, it was Trade, Industry, and something. Architecture, which included ICDC, ICDCI, Kenya Industrial Estates, KIRDI, Industrial Development Bank. They were institutions which were formed in 1966 to promote Africa commerce and trade. But what killed them? Corruption. It is unfortunate, it's a very painful thing, but if there is any one single thing that has pulled Kenya down and is continuing to do so, is corruption.
It's tragic. It's really
tragic.
Yeah.
So,
we also appreciate that you did your very best. Even in that situation, you did your best to see how that assignment would go better, but it went the way it did. Which is a very significant point, because most number of people here also are business people. And one of the things they would want to know is when your business is tending downwards, and what are the tips you would give such a business person to turn their outfit around?
Okay, a business doesn't fall suddenly. That's one thing you need to know. Or even somebody doesn't die suddenly. Death is a process. Business failure is a process. It's not an event. Now, what are the signals when you see, it could even be a business still going up, but the seeds of failure are already planted. So, one book I want you to read that gives you signaling for failure is by Jim Collins. He has written a book called How the Mighty Fall. And he has a graph. Okay? So, usually, business failure begins when you are going up, not when you are coming down. And he called it hubris. There is a state in your business that breeds overconfidence. Because you think, I have mastered this game, I have brought my competitors down. How do you know what's going on in competitors' bedrooms? When you are successful, just know that others are trying to copy your success. And so therefore, they are working day and night. So, initially you might think you are still going up. But that going up means others are working to outcompete you, outmaneuver you. And if you are overconfident, without creating another wave for your own company, you will reach that point where, the rain starts beating you and it's like, but yesterday I was very successful. I had mastered the game. Nobody can master everything in a game. There are always people who are plotting, undercutting. Look at football. Most of you are football fans. UK football. Okay? That's true. Now, if you look at a team like Arsenal, I know most of you are Arsenal. Now, for the last 20 years, they have been struggling to get their form to the top. And it's like, how can a team just go and then suddenly fall? The seeds for failure were planted in the last 5 years of the 20 years ago. So they kept going up, but the seeds of failure. So when they started dropping, it has taken them 20 years to recover. The same thing is happening for Man U. It's the same. So what's the message I'm giving all of you is the seeds for failure are planted when you are successful, when you are most successful. So that is why the message to leaders who run companies is you must always be reinventing. Okay? You must always be innovative, always be creative, and able to anticipate the future. You see, for example, what in your business is likely to happen in the next 3 to 5 years. So even if you are successful today, you say, can that success be replicated in another 5 years? The answer 99% of the time is no. So what am I going to do to make sure that I am successful in the next 5 years and replicate the current success? You must adjust the company. So now how do you go back to your employees and say, oh, it's time to readjust? They'll tell you, but we are successful. Then you tell them, that success was planted 5 years ago. We are harvesting the seeds of things we planted much earlier. What are we going to harvest in the next 5? We must plant it now.
And what we are getting here is yes, please go ahead. Is the value of reinventing, and we know that there's a lot going on there. That there's so much that we can learn in terms of turning our outfits around, but innovation is a key one, right? And it's interesting just how time just passes so fast. But before we end this conversation, I want you to tell us, for you, what has been the place of values in your leadership?
Okay. In life, there are things which change and there are things which don't change. Okay? So, we normally, when you're teaching students and even practicing in the workplace, when you talk about change management, you always say what changes in an organization and what does not change. So let me begin with the things which change. The things which change are things like operations, processes, products. You're adjusting products to suit the customer. Okay? What doesn't change are companies' values, philosophies, ethos. It never changes. Okay? So, even in Christianity, we say Christ is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Christ doesn't change. But the churches change. CITAM is not that old. It is new. But the fundamentals of Christianity have not changed. It's the same. So the same thing to organizations, the same thing to families. There are things that don't change. At home, respect. Whether at the time of Adam or today, it doesn't change. So we must always map in any organization what changes and what doesn't change. So in my small little life, what doesn't change is my values. And for you, please never ever compromise because you think it is either it will not be noticed or it doesn't matter. It is important for you to appreciate that values carry with you for life. There's a politician I interviewed once, informally. I wanted, and I will not tell you the name. I interviewed him and I told him, okay, you have retired now. Okay, what are the lessons you have learned? He told me, number one, okay, friends matter. So it's like, when you're in politics, why do you think friends did not matter? He told me, I thought I had conquered everything. I had reached the peak of my life. And so therefore it didn't matter.
We are beginning to get ideas who that person could be.
Okay, so he told me friends, okay. Then the other thing he said, he thought he would live forever. I told him, but human life has finite. He said, the peak of his political career was in his late 40s. And he was powerful and everything. Okay? Then he told me, now when I lost, because he lost in the election, when I lost, I went and reflected and I was like, life is finite because people disappeared. Then he told me, okay, there is one quality that you have that I don't have. Then I became curious. Now I wanted to know what quality that because he has tons of cash. Then he told me, one, you can walk in the streets of Nairobi, I can't. Okay? And then number two is you can sleep. And he told me, I know you have not stolen. You can sleep, I cannot. So you look at basic things you take for granted. Walking in the streets of Nairobi, I'm sure all of you walk there. So make sure you value sight. And then that you can sleep for 7 hours and wake up and not worry that somebody will knock at your door. Call DCI or ESCC. Don't take those things for granted. So therefore, Reverend, to reinforce the answer of values, when you maintain your values, okay, you live a life, you don't worry, okay? I don't have bodyguards. I drive myself. I sleep. You have never seen a headline saying Kipng'etich scandalized? And me, I live a very simple life, and my children are happy because we just have a normal family and we are excited about life.
Yeah, we really appreciate it's a wonderful thing to meet a wonderful gentleman who lives a very simple life in a very high place. Again, let's appreciate Dr. Julius again. Thank you so much.
We start a program that helps us to go on a journey to get to understand the ministers who are now retired, who spent most of their life in the pulpit and now are in the pew listening to others continue with the work of ministry.
I have retired from now employment, the formal employment.